with me. The price that they paid to eat that meal in that particular moment was very costly. In fact, it cost them their lives, them 12 disciples. Let me just show you what it cost them, as he's going to point out who I'm talking about as we go around the table of the supper, Last Supper. Simon the Zealot. If you read in the history books and find out what they did after Jesus, he was crucified like Jesus with nails in his feet and his hands. The next one around is Thaddeus, and he died on a cross at Odessa. Matthew, history tells us that he was martyred in Ethiopia, and he was slain with a pickaxe. Philip, he was scourged and imprisoned, and afterwards he was crucified, as if scourging and imprisoning is not enough.
Right.
Then you have James. History tells us that he was beheaded in Jerusalem. But before he died, here's the awesome thing about James. Before he died, the officer who was bringing him to the chopping block said, "Because of your faith, I can see Christ in you."
Amen.
And he accepted Christ. And the history says that officer laid his head down with John for the cause of Jesus.
Amen.
Thomas, history says, was murdered by an enraged idol priest with a spear. This is all because they partook of the supper and said, "God, wherever you lead me, I will go." John, the beloved, was boiled in a pot of hot oil, somehow survived that, and then was exiled to the Isle of Patmos. After all of that, they actually let him come back, and he was the only disciple to die peacefully. But I want you to get this. Just get this revelation right here. As bad as it was to be boiled in oil and sent off to the Patmos, the Isle of Patmos, where he was basically in prison and had no contact with nobody, if he hadn't went through that, we would not have the book of Revelation.
That's right. That's right.
See, sometimes God never puts that stuff on you, but sometimes God will use what the devil has meant to destroy you,
Yes.
to bring some kind
Yes.
of revelation
Yes.
out about it.
Yes. That's so true.
So then you have Peter. History tells us he was slain by Nero, and he was crucified upside down on an X-shaped cross, and his wife was crucified right beside him. Judas, the betrayer, he betrayed Christ, and therefore he goes out and he commits suicide and he hangs himself. Andrew was crucified with an X-shaped cross after being whipped severely by 7 soldiers. James the Lesser was thrown over the side of the temple and dropped 100 feet down. And then when he didn't die, they beat him to death with a fuller's club. In other words, it's a hammer to hammer out steel and metal. Or Bartholomew, or another name for Bartholomew was Nathaniel, who was filleted alive and then crucified with his head facing downward. That's the price they had to pay for partaking of the institution of the Lord's Supper. But most importantly, above all them, was the person in the middle,
Amen.
Jesus Christ.
Yes.
By far his sacrifice that was paid was much greater, meant more. He was the person, he was the one that took the cross, went to Golgotha's hill, allowed them to whip him and beat him, put crowns of thorns on his head, allowed him, you understand that when the Passion came out, there was a lot of stirring because the Jews didn't like it because they thought that Mel Gibson was saying that they crucified Christ. You must understand, nobody crucified Christ. If you really understood what Tommy was talking about and how holy and deity he is, no human being could ever capture Christ and crucify him. That's why you understand, this was not the first time that they tried to get him.
Right. That's right.
He just said, "Now is my time.
That's right.
And I willingly lay down my life."
That's right.
He willingly gives his life away for every sinner, for every person. And only Jesus Christ can stop the power of sin in your life. As the gentlemen are coming up to hand out communion, well, I just want you to kind of keep in an atmosphere. And just as they begin to hand this out, I want everyone to feel free to partake of it. You're just going to sit right there in your seat. You're not going to have to get up. They're going to serve you. Go ahead, gentlemen. Go ahead.